Hello, everyone. Welcome to the New to Hill Country podcast. My name is Kaylee, and joined by my husband, Mike Hines, and we have a special guest. I need to look at the name to pronounce it. Cassy Sauceda.
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 You're close.
Sorry.
You're very close.
Who's a life and retirement specialist. So we'll hear more about her life story and her values and all. Before we begin, I would like to just give a little shout out to our sponsors. The first sponsor is SBG Texas, Martial Arts and Yoga Studio, run by husband.
It's my name today is husband.
Right, we started this conversation with like, this is a husband, Mike and I. It's a premier training center for jiu-jitsu, martial arts for kids and adults. Our program is growing, especially the kids program has been phenomenal. So if you're interested, I want you to check it out. Great facility, great people, great teaching. And then we have another sponsor, Element Tea. It's a electrolyte salt mix that will keep you hydrated, so you don't have to drink a gallon of water every day, especially in Texas heat. Not so much now, but in summertime, our members are all hooked and they just like keep chugging. And it's like, how much can I drink in a day? Is it okay to drink so much? So, and it tastes really good. And I'm gonna give you some samples so you can try it out. It's super
wonderful.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I met Cassy at a chamber meeting, a women's alliance.
Yeah, Women's Business Alliance.
Business alliance, and I met a lot of cool women there, and Cassy is one of the women there. We got to talk a lot of different stuff, and I got interested in getting to know her more. So here we are. So let's start with you. How are you originally from here, and how did you come to the Hill Country, and are you happy here? Just tell us more about it.
Sure. I can tell you a little bit about my history. Before I do that, though, I want to thank y'all. One for just being open and being very friendly. I got that from you whenever I spoke with you at the Women's Business Alliance meeting. So thank you, and thank you for doing this, so people can really get to know people in the community. I think that's really important,
Right.
Especially supporting local at a time like this. So in terms of a little bit about me and my history, and if I've always been here, no, I have not. I actually grew up in Pleasanton. I went to school at Texas Lutheran down the street. Went there 5 years, got my master's in accounting, and then I'd always wanted to be like a forensic accountant for like the FBI. That was like my big goal. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And then researching more into it, it was like, oh wait, I need 5 years of audit experience before I can actually even go and do that. So there I go. I'm like, all right, great. So I need to apply to be an auditor. So, got on with one of the big four accounting firms out of Houston. And then in the midst of doing that, I ended up actually meeting who was my first husband. Fell in love, and love took me to Alaska, and I like to say, lack of love, I guess, kind of brought me back home, because I got divorced, and then came back home, and it was during that time that I kind of had my first really reassessment of, man, what do you really want to do? Because I was feeling convicted in my heart of like, man, I'm waking up every day and doing this, but I'm miserable. I'm really miserable, but I kept doing it. And I always think about like, why as humans do that? Why is it that we just sometimes just stick with the nature of what we're doing out of habit? And so whenever I came back home, it was like my life was in shatters. Like I was like, okay, how to move back in with mom and dad, who wants to do that? But whenever unfortunate circumstances arise, like you're like, man, I just got to do what I got to do to survive. And that was at that point, living with mom and dad, finding a job at that point, didn't have a car, I sold it, all that stuff. And times were really tough. And at that point, I kept thinking like, how can I use my degree that's going to make me feel a little bit more fulfilled in a way that I can help people in a purposeful way? And so from there, I was looking, and I landed upon financial planning. And so I had a buddy from TLU back when I attended there. And he had bugged me probably ever since I graduated, saying, come to Edward Jones, come, like, you're gonna love it. You just need to get your husband to stop traveling so much with the military, because you need to be based somewhere. You have to have a brick and mortar. And I'm like, that's never in a million years would I do that. And then I got back home and I entertained it, applied, got the job, and that's what brought me actually to this area. And it was a privilege, really, because I thought about going back to Seguin, because I really love Texas Lutheran. I love everything that they stand for, the culture there too. And so I was like, I really want to go there. And Edward Jones was like, well, we don't have anything in Seguin. It's kind of very saturated. There's not much options there, but we do have something in New Braunfels. And I'm like, all right, I can drive about 25 minutes and go visit them or go help out when needed. So that's what brought me here specifically. And it's been, I don't want to say it's been like great ever since I've been here, but I've always tried to find the silver lining in everything, in every opportunity, because I don't think anything happens by chance. I think that, there's always a purpose behind something, and there's a reason. Whether, you entering someone's life, someone into yours, like they're there for a reason. They're going to teach you, they're going to help you, or going to teach you a lesson. And so, lo and behold, I was here probably for about 3 or 4 months before I actually met my husband. And so, I guess boyfriend at the time, that was to become a husband later on. But since then, I was building up my practice, building relationships in the community. With Edward Jones, you would have to go door to door, literally knocking on doors to build up your business. So I had to develop a lot of grit and not really wear my heart on the sleeve when people said, "What are you doing? Get out of my property," type of thing. So it was hard, but it taught me like a lot of things. But the more I was doing it, I think I recognized the longer I was there, I loved what I did when I got to do it. And it seemed like you're constantly trying to build and build, like any small business. You open your doors, people will just walk in and just say, "Hey, yeah, I need you." Like, they're not lining up at the door, especially whenever, you're at that point, I was 26, 27, looking extremely young. And when I knocked on their door, they thought I was there to sell them cookies. And I'm like, no, I'm not the Girl Scout girl. No, that's not me. So that was a struggle of like, hey, how do you, now that you are running your own business, even though it's backed by Edward Jones, like, how do you make something of that? Like, in a lot of, all right, I feel like I'm a kid again, or a baby, like trying to learn how to walk. So that was really neat. But over time, it was like I was doing it, and the part that I loved the most was the relationships. I recognized that, of really just meeting with people, complete strangers, the ones who actually like said, "Yeah, sure, here's my statements. Like, I'm retired and I don't know how to make income out of my money, like my 401k." And so meeting with them and just getting to know them and making it to where it was a relationship of, I'm not just your financial person. I think we ended up really talking about more of their life than their finances, really, to be honest. And it becomes a level of, they just trust you because they know who you are. They know if you're genuine or not. And then it got to the point where it's like, "Hey, there's this going on. Like, I think you should really, take this opportunity." They're like, "Yeah, great. But I don't even need to know the details. Just do it." And I'm like, I need to tell you this, like, by law, like, what's going to happen. So just to know that you can develop that much trust with people. But not only that, but it's really that you get to care about them, and then you become family. Like, and that was the greatest part of it is, every annual review we had, they came in multiple times because they're like, "We have to wait a year to see you." And I'm like, "Well, no, you can just come anytime." And it was always like a family reunion. It was that, "Hey, how are the kids doing? How are the grandkids?" So it was a really cool culture that you're able to build whenever you have flexibility to do that.
Tell me a little more about like what you do, like if anybody's interested in your service, how do they go about it? What do you do specifically? How do you help them?
Yeah, so if anyone's interested, usually it's a phone call or a message or something, but they can find me online. I am on Facebook, I am on Instagram. I do not have a business Instagram, but I do have Facebook. I'm working on getting a website up, in the process of that, to be able to be located a little bit more, to have references, product guidance on there so they know what's out there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people in this world that will provide misinformation, or that they will just go and say, "Hey, this is good for you," and take advantage of people in unfortunate situations. So I like to be a resource, and I tell them that, like, look, I would love to earn your business, but before that, like, I just want to know what is it that is best for you. And if you're in something good, that's great. Like, you're gonna stay there. If I can't offer you anything better or can't better your situation, then, well, I can still be your friend, but I won't be able to, do that for you. But the best way to answer your question is literally find me online, or ask for the information, I'm happy to provide it.
How do we find you?
So yeah, we can put like your phone number when we put this up. We'll have it on YouTube. There'll be other like show notes, and it'll publish on like Apple Podcasts and different places. And so in our show notes, we can have like your phone number or whatever you want, email or something, and then people can check it out pretty easily.
So is it mostly for people who'd like to have some sort of a life insurance plan and also retirement plan a little bit? You said earlier it's like 70-30 ratio.
The portion of my business. So I specialize, coming from Edward Jones, I love doing the retirement planning side of it. It's a little different in that I don't work with the stocks and mutual funds, but I do safe retirement planning. So it's literally being able to participate in the stock market, but not being impacted, especially whenever there's a decline. So I don't know if y'all follow the stock market, but thinking about like in March, whenever COVID hit, and it's like, oh my gosh, what is this? What is this thing that's out there that seems like it's, unfortunately, killing off people like at a mass amount of time. And so the stock market really took a huge hit. And in times like that, whenever let's say, for example, you're 70 years old and all your money's in the stock market and stocks or mutual funds, and you don't really know like what you're in. That's the hard part, is people like have things and they're like, well, yeah, I got stocks or I have mutual funds. Like, well, what's inside of those mutual funds? How do they work? How are they working for you, or how are they working against you in a time of volatility? And so thinking about that, some people can't really afford to take that risk. You're 70 years old, you're retired, you're on a fixed income with Social Security plus whatever income you're taking from your retirement portfolio. Let's say that dropped by 25%. Like, you'd be in a bind, and you don't know how long it takes to recover. Fortunately, it did. But what I specialize in is taking out the guessing game and knowing like, hey, we know that you're never gonna lose, and most people can say I can't guarantee you a loss or a number. On our end, we can guarantee you're not gonna lose money. And when you lose money, it's just because you're starting to take from it. That's the only loss in there. But you experience growth. It's not going to be astronomical like as if you owned a whole portfolio of stocks, but you still get half of whatever the stock market does. So that, and then the life insurance. Everyone needs life insurance, whether you're an infant, unfortunately, because things do happen, or even if you're, let's see, the last week I helped a gentleman who was 86 years old, and by the grace of God, we got him coverage. And so really, we're really able to help people. We specialize in helping people who have medical problems. Let's say you're diabetic, or you had a heart attack 4 years ago, and you're like, well, no one will cover me. We will. And it's not something that's what's called a graded plan. Like, you're gonna get the coverage. You're gonna probably pay a little bit more for it because you're higher risk to the insurance companies. But we can definitely help literally anyone. If you have a heartbeat, doesn't matter what's happened to you, we can find a product for you that's gonna give you the coverage.
That's awesome. Feels like that really covers the loophole of the whole system where people want to get covered, but then just like the insurance companies are pretty strict about all this coverage. And
they really are, and I understand that because it is a risk to them. There's a big risk versus the reward of they're playing a bet. The actuarial side of it. But yeah, so that's
cool. I really love that relationship part too. We feel that way too, because our motto is one tribe, one vibe, and I see it more and more. Just like teaching jiu-jitsu is one thing, but also just the relationship that comes with it. A relationship that you build with your students, the kids, and also adults, and even the families of the students, the moms.
Definitely.
And it's been really awesome, and that's probably bigger part than the class itself. That we really feel very
makes
satisfied.
Your heartbeat, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it really makes you realize why you do what you do. And definitely I can relate to that.
Like, the only part of my life that really feels like work is the admin.
Right. That's
like,
true.
The rest of it's not really work. So like, I think of like, I haven't really read it, but Tim Ferriss's like 4-hour work week is kind of, I know a lot of people complain about that because they're like, wow, he's not really saying that. Like, he's saying like you have 4 hours of admin and then you make the rest of it not work. But it's kind of how I feel my life is. I think I have more than 4 hours of admin though. But
that's
but
where you start outsourcing.
Right.
That's trying to outsource the things that you don't really like to do. Or
that's where maybe
that you can
starting
do.
with like an endowment or like
Or something
having
like that.
like having a nice little cushy
Yeah.
fund before you started that maybe. But yeah, there's
Anything's
definitely.
possible.
I think it's possible though. Yeah, you just have to drive for it.
Right. Yeah. So we met at the chamber event. Are you really like actively involved in the Chamber of Commerce? Because we're new. We just joined, and then right after we joined, COVID happened. So all the things that we were planning to do, all the mixers and stuff, we just couldn't really take advantage of it. So I feel like I kind of didn't really get to know the chamber as much as I wanted to. So if you're involved, tell us a little more about it.
Yes, I'm actually I'm on the board, and actually I was a part of it before we transitioned to actually join the big chamber.
Oh, right.
So I don't know if I had shared this with you or not, but we were before. Wow, did I forget the name of it? Or actually, I did. The Women's Chamber. Actually, we called ourselves the Women's Chamber. But once we merged with them, we couldn't use the name.
I see.
So it's like then we kind of reformed and became the Women's Business Alliance.
Gotcha.
But it's really a great resource to be able to, just as you were doing, just network and meet people, other like-minded business owners who are here in the community just wanting to support each other. And it's really neat, and what I love about the Women's Business Alliance is that, you know, we are all women, not trying to really support other women businesses, which I think is huge, especially in our community. Beyond that, though, we care about not just this generation that we are in now, but the one behind us, of giving back. And that's why whenever you're paying your membership dues, or even whenever you're coming to a luncheon, whenever we charge for a lunch, all that money, the proceeds actually go to a scholarship fund. To really just propel and build that up to say, hey, at the end of the year, we're gonna take whatever's in that fund, and it's literally, we're gonna select, you know, maybe 8, 10 students based on how much funds we end up, you know, accumulating, and we give it back to them. We have a whole application process. They have to literally do recommendation letters, everything, and we have a meeting, and we'll sit there, all of us, and we'll go through it, and we'll see like, hey, this is what this person did. And it's really neat once you make those selections. We host another lunch, invite those members in with their, you know, somebody, their parents, and recognize them for their achievements, and in hopes that we get to at least help at some point with books, whatever it will cover for them, in hopes of it's going to motivate them to want to maybe come back and maybe even just have the courage and be brave enough to say, look, I want to do something here in the community, whether it's working here or even maybe becoming a female business owner. I feel like that's something we definitely could use more of.
So how can these girls who can benefit from a scholarship, how can they do that, go about it? Is it known to many people, or?
Yes and no. We usually, it's our word of mouth that we go in and put it into schools.
I see.
So we have actually a specific board member who has a, like, we call it a sub chair, really, and they're the point of contact, and their sole job is to make sure they're connected with the high schools here in the area, and they provide that information to the counselors. The counselors then directly feed it to the students.
Great.
And then I'm sure whenever it gets closer, it probably will be on the Chamber of Commerce website, to where they can go and access that, and that'd be another resource.
That was really awesome. I remember meeting Amy. I forgot.
Yeah,
her
Amy
full-
Feller.
Yes. I really loved her presentation and how she just decided to have some principles in terms of kind of sponsoring and then just like helping girls. That's kind of my, my calling, and I really love that.
And to think that she went and her vision was, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna have an all-female roofing crew.
Right.
Like, and some people would be like, well, what is that? Are you crazy? No, like, women can do this. They can. They have the abilities. You just got to build upon the knowledge. And if someone's there empowering you, giving you the tools and resources, like, man, it's all right there. It's just a matter of a vision. And she made it happen. It's awesome. I love her. She's great.
It was really impressive.
Yeah, it is.
You say you do some volunteer work as well. Can you tell us a little more about that too?
Yeah, pre-COVID. The volunteering work that I would do really was more so with seniors. I did some within our church, but to be honest, I hadn't in a while. But what I like, my bread and butter is helping people at Eden Hill. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that retirement facility. Some of it's at senior living, some of it's independent living. But I specifically go there and help with memory care. We call it memory cafe is what it is. So essentially anybody who struggles with memory loss, Alzheimer's, or is just needing something to really jog their mind would go there probably 2 times a month. And they have different locations for different areas, like Canyon Lake had one, New Braunfels had 2, and it'd be on different dates just to accommodate the seniors and their schedules, knowing they have doctor's appointments and whatnot. But literally go in and be able to, one, get to know them. One of the, some of the games that we play is just tossing around the volleyball and saying, hey Ed, where is your right thumb at right now? And he's like, my right thumb, and my right thumb, and it's like, and then having to acknowledge what color it's at, or just being able to help that, or taking out letters. And Iris Bowden, who's the volunteer coordinator, she's phenomenal at it, will take a letter from a bucket and say, all right, it's, we're in Christmas, name something that you like in Christmas that starts with your letter. So it's like them jogging their mind again. So that's really the majority of that. I would do some things with the Hispanic Business Alliance too, because my husband and I are involved with that. Community gardens, doing things of that nature. So, but the main one really is email.
And then with COVID, I guess it's not really happening.
Yeah, it's so sad. They tried doing a Zoom, but can you imagine a bunch of seniors trying to get on a Zoom? I don't know that it worked out so well, but it was really sad because you think about the people right now who really need that human connection and connectivity the most right now. And I think about that and I'm like, man, it kills me. To think they're there, no one can really come in. They can't really come out. I don't know if the rules have changed since then, but whenever I last saw Iris, I was like, can I become a pen pal, or can I drop stuff off? And at that point, they're like, no, I couldn't do that, because at that point they weren't sure if you could travel through germs through your hands, and so things like that. So that's what makes it really hard. So just seeing what you can do seems pretty limited, but I'm hoping it'll change soon. But I also know that their whole goal is protecting the seniors and the staff too that are there, with them all the time.
Yeah, we're hoping to see the situation turning around with New Year's, but I don't know, it's kind of sad.
And also with this shot that's out.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully this year things will be better. Did COVID affect your business as well? Like what you're doing?
Yeah. It affected me, so it did. So I left where I was at Edward Jones in August, and how that came about was I got COVID. Literally, I got COVID. But before that, I did a program. I'm not sure if y'all have heard of 75 Hard at all. Where literally there's certain things you do for 75 days. And part of it was... actually Kyle mentioned that. Yes. Drinking a gallon of water.
Right. Reading 30 books or something like that. And then
30 is a little too much.
Is it 10?
You read 10 pages a day.
Oh, 10 pages a day. Right.
I guess how small your books are.
And then 2 exercises a day, whatever form.
One has to be outdoors.
Right.
One can be indoors. And then taking a picture, like a progress picture every single day. And if you miss any one
you have
of
to
those,
restart.
Start over.
Right. So you did that?
I did, but I made it to 73.
Okay.
And then my daughter, I have a 14-year-old stepdaughter named Hadley. She ended up getting COVID through a sports camp, and she, was with us. And then about a week later, I ended up getting it, and I was like, okay. And it was right before that I was really I literally was at day 73 of my program, and it was hitting me hard. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, and I'm like, I'm 2 days away from finishing, but I feel so weak. And he's like, you better not try to do a 45-minute workout. But through that though, it impacted me and just thinking more of my habits and what I do. And I'm like, man, okay, I love what I do when I get to do it, and how often do I get to do what I like to do given the parameters and everything. So literally that's kind of, that program really just made me have a mindset shift to really reflect and say, okay, if there's something better out there, you don't know better until you look, right? And so that's where the transition happened, and then going independent completely, and now in life insurance and safe retirement, there was an even bigger need. So whenever COVID hit and people are driven by fear. Unfortunately, they're seeing these numbers are rising and rising, and the number of seniors that are like, man, if I get this, I'm gonna pass away and I don't have life insurance. And it's called final expense life insurance. It's, usually smaller policies, anywhere from 10 to 30,000. So, and it's lead generated. So I'll go in and I'll buy leads from whatever the area is that I'm serving, which mostly is in Braunfels, Canyon Lake, and Austin area. And so, man, the leads, they were much higher, meaning there's, probably before in this area, maybe you'd get maybe 100 to 200 a week, to where it surmounted.
Wow.
It was huge. So the need was a lot bigger. And people were thinking, man, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna leave my family here with my debt. How are they gonna afford my final expenses? And so the need, and thankfully we're an essential worker, so we're still able to go out and serve these people. So it really made a bigger need. Not only that, but the amount of people that are getting laid off. And then from there, they're like, well, now I definitely don't have insurance. And I also, the ones that were at a point where they're like, I'm just gonna enter retirement. Now they have their 401k, and they're like, what do I do with it now? So there was actually a bigger need, and it actually propelled. Unfortunately, it's kind of sad to say, it propelled my business in that moment of doing that.
Well, I think you can see the need arising. In these times, kind of people are more aware of our finite nature. When would be a good time to start planning for retirement? Anytime, probably.
That is a great question.
Always kind of ask that myself. So when is a good time? Because we always feel like we're young. We're gonna be young forever, which is not true.
if it doesn't matter where you're at. If you're as of 18 years old, I'd say right then and there, or even before then. Whenever I talk to Hadley, I'm like, hey, so you have an allowance now. Is there any portion of this that maybe you want to put away for savings? And she's at that point where she's like, no, not at all. And I'm like trying to instill that habit for her of the purpose behind it. It's like, man, there's so much. But now she's learning. She's like, oh, I got my nails off. That was $50. I'm gonna paint my nails instead. And I'm like, oh, really? So it's kind of nice and teaching her that. But as far as investing, I'd say when you're 18, the best thing, if it's my piece of advice to anybody listening, the moment you are 18, go and open up a Roth IRA. And even if you can put $20 a month, and over time, as your life changes, you get that first job, or you get a job and say you're in trade school or college or whatnot, start adding to that thing. Before you know it, if you can start putting $50 a month away at that age, you're gonna be a millionaire by the time you're senior. You're gonna be a millionaire. It's hard not to be. Now you have to have a lot of downturns in the market to not be, but the power of just systematically investing every single month. Not only that, but reinvesting dividends.
I see. So
whenever you have that, especially in a downturn, you're buying more shares at a lower cost. And people don't really get that. So start now. And if you're older than 18, no matter where you're at in life, it's never too late to start.
I see.
It's a matter of, what do you really want? What's important to you? And time. You gotta have time, because it's gonna take a little time to make a return. It also depends on what type of investments you're in. But definitely talk to a professional, because people say, they're like, well, there's no wrong way to invest. I'm like, well, depending on your age and your time horizon, there definitely could be. You could, be 70 years old and get in all stocks, and like I said, end up losing a lot of money. But you want to get into something that is true to your risk assessment, that your comfort level with that.
And then what you're doing as part of that kind of help look at people's financial situation and more customized advice. That's really cool.
It really is. And I don't know, I nerd out with it, and I'm like, oh, this is neat, being able to get their statements and see hey, and the coolest thing is just get to congratulate them, because even if you don't have a lot, and people will come in there, and it's amazing to me, because they're like, man, I only have 300,000. I know it's not a lot, and I'm like, hey, you're so hard on yourself. Commend yourself for the fact that you started at some point. Because there's so many choices you could have made that this wouldn't have been possible. So it's just take this moment to think hey, I did do this, and it may not be where you want to be at just yet, but you know what, like you've come a long way. So
that's a really good point. People always kind of tend to think like go.
Yeah, like I'm not there yet.
Goal, and then higher goal. Yeah.
And then sometimes you have people that are like, yeah, like it could be the opposite, where it's like, yeah, I'm ready to retire, and we're like, okay, great, you're ready, cool. Well, let's just double verify that you're ready. And then it's like I show them, and I'm like, according to what I'm seeing here, you're actually going to run out of money whenever you're 72 years old. And they're like, and they're like, well, how is that possible? And I'm like, well, did you take into account these expenses or this? Or they're like, no. Like, I'm like, well, these are the small little things, and that's why you need somebody who kind of is thinking about the full picture. Or the biggest thing too is long-term care cost. You know, you can have the best financial plan out there, and then a long-term care event happens, and it's not covered. That's where a lot of people end up just going downhill. Unfortunately.
Think in advance.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
Now.
Yeah, and what I love about some of the plans that we have, especially through our life insurance platforms, they offer you living benefits and similar to long-term care benefits. So let's say something happens in the form of a chronic, critical, or terminal illness, you don't have to die before you can actually touch your death benefit.
I see.
So you get to pull it out and use it, especially thinking about, you know, say if you're 67 years old and you're like, the kids or your caretaker's like, well, mom and dad, I can't do this for you. Well, great, like I have this policy and we can use that. So, yeah, it's really nice because there's multiple ways to plan for that need.
Definitely something that people need to think about instead of putting it off like we do.
Like we do.
It's all right. It's why we have people.
Right. But I mean, it's great. Like talking to you really kind of motivate you to think about it and look into it instead of like just pushing it aside and maybe
one day I'm gonna do
that.
One day, like
the mistake of trying to look into it just by yourself.
That's
like,
true.
Instead of relying on people that have spent
Right.
an enormous amount of time understanding what it is, like that's always a mistake in almost any direction.
Totally. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in getting to know more. Before I let you go, just one last question. I remember you started this conversation with like being in a really bad place and not knowing how to live a life that is fulfilling and all. How do you feel about now, where you are right now? Do you feel like you're closer to where you want to be?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Man, I don't even know how to explain the difference. I've learned, I'm 30 years old right now, I've learned, I guess, probably in the last 6 months more so of how important it is to self-reflect. Not only just like, you know, in this last year, but even your childhood. Like, I didn't recognize how much you can carry, like, within you from your earliest years. And it wasn't through literally going through counseling and like doing a lot of work on my own heart, like to be like, okay, I'm unhappy, but what is that? Where is it coming from? Where is that rooted? Like, and that's where if you're vulnerable enough to go down to the root and really like look in the mirror and say, okay, like who am I? And not just who am I, but who do I want to be? Because at this present moment, I literally am whoever I have been and what I've been exposed to as a kid, my upbringing, my experiences. So yeah, to answer your question, I'm much happier. I'm still doing the process of literally growing and doing that healing work that, you know, that's definitely essential. And whenever I was going through this, and I'm like, man, like this is tough. This is hard, you know? And then I recognized, like, man, if this is for me, like thinking about everyone you pass on the streets, everyone has a story.
Right.
Everyone has an experience, whether good or bad. And it's really hard because in this world, especially on social media, everyone's just putting their best self out there.
That's true.
And it's like, you know, if we could really be not completely vulnerable there, because I do think there's some level of, you know, not everybody needs to know everything, but just letting people know, like, hey, this is me, and yeah, I had a bad day, or yeah, you know what, like my relationship's not going the way I want it to, but hey, like I messed up, instead of trying to shame somebody else or make somebody else look bad, just take ownership.
Right,
you know?
right.
But yeah, so I'm in a much better place, I think, on a mental standpoint in my mindset, and the power to sit down with somebody and before, I'm a pretty transparent person. I really am. And I'm thankful because I'm a very God-driven person too. So it's like gotten me closer to like understanding like, okay, who is my God and what does he say about me versus maybe the self-doubt that I put in myself or those negative things in my head that you speak to yourself and you don't even recognize it.
Right.
Like I never recognized like, man, like I was just talking about the things I can't do versus no, you can do that. And God's giving you the ability. And shame on you if you're denying that to yourself and denying the gifts he's given you. So yeah, that's
awesome.
Hopefully that answered that.
Totally answers that. I mean, I totally agree that we're all work in progress. We can't really reach the final destination. That's not life anyway.
You're right about that.
Yeah, just I can see why we hit it up so quickly. I'm all with you. I really believe in self, introspection, reflection, and all. Otherwise, you just like life just happens, and I feel like sometimes I lose control of my life. Like just I'm kind of following the life that is just taking me. So to take that ownership, you really need to kind of stop and think and all. But thank you so much for being here. I'd like to get to know you more. I think it was wonderful. And for you to be open-minded and come to us and just share your stories. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you again for the invite.
Yeah.
And can I throw a side note in there?
Yes,
Sure.
absolutely.
Y'all should definitely come to the facility and actually come and see for yourself. Man, it's really neat. And when you walk through this door, it's I don't know how to describe it, but you can see a lot of the hard work and the vision that was put into it to make it very unique and warm here. So if you have kids, if you want to know more about, is it karate?
Jiu-jitsu. Yeah, but just martial arts.
Yeah. Martial arts in general. Sorry, I don't.
That's all right.
It's all good.
I've been watching Cobra Kai on Netflix.
Yeah,
So
we
how
need to
much
check that
I
out,
know
yeah.
about this, but yeah, definitely come and check it out and see what they have to offer.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Come to SPG, Texas.
Yes. Thank you. That was awesome.
Great.
Love the story.
Yeah, thank y'all.
Yeah.
Are these all kiddos?